spend a lot of time on beer forums because I like to research the beer that I'm putting into my soaps. And I have learned an interesting fact that a lot of people do not know the difference between a stout and a porter. And honestly, I didn't either until I, spent a lot of time on said beer forums. Do you know the difference? So as you can probably tell, we are definitely making another beer soap today. But before I get into what beer soap that is, hello, I'm Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You're at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things. And today we are on day 69 of 365 days of soap, and we are making the Chestnut Porter. The Chestnut Porter has been in my line for years, almost since the very beginning of the line, and it is made with, as you might assume, a porter. Now, I've made beer soaps on the channel in the past, most notably the dumpster fire that was the Big Lather beer soap test. God, that video was painful. And the process is reasonably the same. You're going to let your beer go flat, you're going to freeze it, and then you're going to use it in place of your distilled water in your recipe. But we're going to do things a little bit differently today. I'm actually going to show you how to play with glycerin rivers. Glycerin rivers are a really interesting thing in the soaping community. Some soapers absolutely hate them and believe that they destroy the look of the bar. And I guess in some cases, that can be true. Other soapers work with them and use them to their advantage to sort of enhance their designs. And so I'm going to show you kind of why glycerin rivers form and what you can do to form them or to make sure that they don't show up in your soap. That is the thing that we're going to be focusing on today with the Chestnut Porter pour. So let's go check it out. Okay, so today we are making the Chestnut Porter. And the Chestnut Porter has, ground chestnuts in there, which is awesome. And we also do color it with some cappuccino mica, just a little bit. And the scent blend is a mandarin blend with some cool spices in there to kind of, make it more earthy and whatever, as well as the kaolin clay, which is in quite a bit of water right now. Now, the water will come into play later, but while I am mixing up and emulsifying the soap batter that again has the beer, it's a porter that we have used from E9. That is a brewery on 6th Ave in Tacoma, and that was substituted for 100% of the water in the batch. But while I am emulsifying this, and I'm not there, you're gonna keep going. And it kind of looks like I'm there right now. Actually, that's an interesting example of false trace because I'm soaping this very cool, and this particular oil blend has a lot of actual solid oils in it, right? And so when you soap an oil blend very cool that has lots of solid oils like stearic acid or coconut oil, the oils themselves are actually starting to thicken and solidify. And while it looks like, in the pot it's thick and it's grasping to the stick blender really nicely, it doesn't mean that it's actually emulsified. Haven't hit it yet, and so you have to be careful with false trace. Now I did finally get this to emulsification, and again, when I'm soaping low with solid oils, I go a little bit past what I think emulsification probably is, just to ensure that the batch is really, fully blended. Because if it's not, that will show up in the cure. Your bar will start to get crumbly, there will be lye pockets. You'll definitely be able to tell that it did not, actually hit trace or emulsification. So I did, actually stick blend it a little bit longer just to make double sure. And I tend to do that with all soaps that I end up soaping too cool. Anyway, I'm going to be putting the mica into the main base of this pot, and we'll then mix it up in there. Now, we're working with Glycerin rivers today, right? And Glycerin rivers are actually a very cool thing. It's an interesting thing in the soap world. Some people hate them and think they completely ruin a design. Other people really love them and use them to their benefit. So we are going to be doing the latter today. We're going to try to intentionally create Glycerin rivers in both sections to use them to our benefit in the actual design. Now, when it comes to formulating, recipes, lye, the lye that you put into a recipe is very, kind of self-explanatory. It's something that really doesn't change. So essentially what you do with your lye is you look at your oil blend and all of the oils that you have. Each oil has a different saponification value, right? And so that is the amount of lye that is needed to saponify that particular oil. And you will find the saponification value of all of your oils and then add it up together, and that's how much lye you need. So great, awesome. Now water is an arbitrary thing within soap making, and soapers soap at all different, levels of, water percentages really. And the only really hard and fast rule that you really need when you're figuring out your water is you have to have as much water as you do lye, right? So if you need 6 ounces of lye for your batch, you need at least 6 ounces of water to dissolve it in. But beyond that, it's kind of your deal. You can soap it, 1.4 times your lye. You can soap it 2 times, 3 times. You can use water as a percentage, lye as a percentage of your oils. I mean, there are lots of different ways that you can figure out how much water you want to put in a batch. But if you end up using too much water in a batch of soap, you are going to be dealing with, well, a softer bar that takes longer to cure, that will eventually actually lose a lot more water weight than maybe you were expecting. So it might be kind of tricky when you're cutting it and figuring out, your final weight for your bars. But also you can get Glycerin rivers if you have, too much water content in your soap. And so that's what we are doing today. We are actually adding extra water. The water content, the water ratio that I have, the lye water ratio for this particular batch is 1.6 times lye. So you have your 6 ounces of lye, for example, and then you multiply that by 1.6, and that's how much water I have in this batch. But I am also adding an additional about 4 ounces of water to the batch with the kaolin clay, because the kaolin was dispersed in water for this go round. And in doing that, in adding extra water to the batch, I'm going to see Glycerin rivers in both sections, and that will be cool to check out, so you can actually see the difference in Glycerin rivers in a colored portion versus Glycerin rivers in a white portion or a natural colored portion. The Glycerin rivers really tend to show up more in the lighter colors than they do the dark, but they definitely do still show up in the darker colors. So that is the goal for today, and that is what we will be trying to accomplish. And in order to really ensure that those Glycerin rivers show up in the white portion, I put quite a bit of extra water into this. So I have about, I don't know, 40 ounces or so of the soap batter in this Pyrex, and I added an additional 2 ounces of water to this before I poured. So it should, in theory, create some cool Glycerin rivers in the actual finished soap. And at this point, we are just going to mix everything up and pour it over the top of the base layer, which is, again, it is a scented, and it has the cappuccino mica in it, as well as the chestnuts. And we're just going to pour it over the top and give it a little bit of a sculpting on the top, because I'm looking for like a glass of beer, with like the foam head and whatever with my beer soaps. And I've kind of always done my beer soaps that way, because again, I work with clay soap, so things get kind of thick kind of fast, and also when you're working with beer soaps, there's also an added, level of, it gets thick fast because you have the sugars that are working in there and it's heating up the entire recipe a little bit faster than, just a normal recipe with distilled water. And so I wanted to keep the designs simple for the beer soaps for that reason. I need to give myself enough time to work with these, and a really complicated design, that's going to be difficult to do with the beer soaps that I make, because I do sub out, for the most part, 100% of the distilled water needs in a recipe for beer. And so it can heat up, it can get thick, it's all thing. But this one actually performed really beautifully, and look, it looks nothing like the big lather test, dumpster fire. So look at that. See, beer soaps, they're great, they're awesome. And I am going to put this in the oven and let it cure overnight. I am going to C-pop this. Now, C-popping things that have soaps that have sugar in them can be dangerous, really. I mean, not dangerous, but you can end up with a cracked top because essentially too much heat is in the is getting to the bar, and so that heat has to go somewhere, and it will do so through the middle of the bar and creating a nice cracked top. I don't ever care about cracked tops though, so I still want to C-pop it so I can get it out of the mold and get it cut as quickly as possible. So that is what we are going to do, and then we are going to cut this and see if the glycerin rivers showed up tomorrow. Okay, it is day 2 and we are on to the cut, and look how shiny that top looks. Everything looks really nice in this. I don't see any sort of problems. It's a reasonably firm bar right now too, and again, that's because this particular blend has lots of solid oils in it, so that's going to be the thing. And when I say lots of solid oils, this is like 60% solid to 40% liquid, so it's nothing like drastic. I have seen some soap recipes in my master classes that people have created, and it's like a 100% cocoa butter soap, and that's a lot of solid oils. Like that's something. But it is ready to cut and do the thing and see if we have achieved some glycerin rivers in the soap design by using extra water. And yeah, we totally have. You see those little craggy bits on the white portion? Those are glycerin rivers. They are awesome. Now, if you look on the brown portion, the bottom part of the Chestnut Porter, you see some sort of like lighter gray areas too. Yeah, you got that, and those are glycerin rivers as well, and that's what it looks like within a colored portion versus a white portion. And I really love this. I think it adds some really cool interest to the bar, glycerin rivers in general, especially for a bar like this. So success, we increased the water volume in the recipe and got some awesome glycerin rivers out of it, and that's winning right there. And yeah, so again, if you don't want glycerin rivers, you need to pay attention to your water, really, and see which where you can reduce your water content in your bars to ensure that you do not get glycerin rivers. But for me, I love them. I love them in the brown portion. I love them in the white portion. For this particular soap, it absolutely works. Now, if this were showing up in something like the Tyler Durden, I would be less happy, honestly, because that wasn't the goal for the Tyler Durden, but it was the goal for this guy, so it was a successful pour, which is awesome. And yeah, those are glycerin rivers. That's the Chestnut Porter beer soap. This is day 69 of 365 days of soap, and it's a thing. Look at that, pretty soap. And there it is, the Chestnut Porter. And I love this bar. And I know I say that about all of the bars, but beer soaps are great. You saw the big lather test, right? Like, winner, that was absolutely the winner. But yeah, the Chestnut Porter in and of itself, it's a fairly uncomplicated design. You have just the 2 colors because I wanted it to look like a mug of beer. But the real thing that I did want to show you today was how you sort of achieve glycerin rivers within your soap design. And that can be something that you can use to your advantage within your soap designs themselves. So yeah, increasing the water content is going to be a pretty easy way to ensure that you're getting your glycerin rivers in whatever portion of the soap that you would want.
And as you can see, nothing crazy happens when you add extra water to your batch. In fact, what happens is glycerin rivers. So that's cool. File that away in your soapy, repertoire in your brain, and roll with that for later. Thank you so much for joining me for another round of 365 days of soap. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something. I hope you continue to stick around. And the best way to continue to stick around is to subscribe to the channel and do the things, because I'm a growing channel and I would love to be considered like a real YouTuber someday. So hit the word. And subscribe to the channel. That will definitely help me out in huge ways. If you are interested in purchasing the Chestnut Porter, it's on the website. It is available at soapandclay.com, as well as the other 3 beer soaps that we have in the line. And yeah, if you're interested in following me on social media, you can do the thing. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And thank you so much for joining me for another round of 365 days of soap. That is it for me today. I will see you tomorrow for another soapy adventure. Bye.